We did no wrong here, and we don't understand how we're getting so much hate behind it. We all cared and loved Nolan, and nobody wanted to see Nolan die. Nobody wanted to see his life be taken so short.
Back here in the U.S. now, we have new reporting tonight on that mysterious death of an 18-year-old Nolan Wells. For the first time tonight, we now hear from one of the last people to see him alive.
Let's start with a piece of audio that split this case wide open. Somewhere in the flood of footage taken on Horn Island that day, one short clip started spreading faster than any of the others. It's shaky, shot from a boat pulling away from shore, the kind of accidental documentation that happens now at every party in America because everyone's got a camera in their pocket. In the clip, you can hear a young man's voice, raised, agitated, yelling toward the beach. And somewhere in the noise, listeners believe they heard him demanding something back. A phone. Attorney Ben Crump looked at that clip and reached a conclusion that detonated across social media within hours. He said the young man in the footage, the one yelling, the one who appears to be part of a group standing on the sand, was Nolan Wells. And if that was true, it meant the very last documented moment of Nolan's life wasn't him casually waving goodbye to friends and mentioning a girl he wanted to talk to. It was him in visible distress, arguing, possibly over his own phone, moments before he vanished for good. Think about what that would mean if it were confirmed. It would mean the story everyone had been told, the calm, mundane version where a teenager simply decided to stay behind and catch a later ride, was wrong. It would mean something had already gone sideways before that boat even left the island. Crump reposted the clip. It spread through group chats, through comment sections, through every corner of the internet, where people had already made up their minds about what happened to Nolan Wells. And for a few days, that yelling voice became the emotional center of the entire case. People analyzed the pitch of it. People slowed it down frame by frame, looking for a face. People built entire theories out of 11 seconds of shaky phone audio. And then a name stepped forward that nobody expected to hear from directly. Traces Tin Shepard. If you've been following this case, you already know Shepard's name matters here. Because he wasn't some stranger weighing in from the internet. He'd known Nolan since they were freshmen at Ocean Springs High School. He was there on the island that day. And in an interview with ABC News, he said something that pulled the rug out from under the entire audio theory. That voice, Shepard said, wasn't Nolan's. It was his own. He said he was the one yelling in that clip, not over a phone, not in some altercation involving Nolan at all, but because he was in the middle of a physical fight with a stranger. Someone, he says, just started swinging at him out of nowhere. He said 2 people were physically holding him back in that moment, trying to keep him from going after Guy, and that Nolan wasn't even part of that scene.
That's the video I'm referring to. That's me yelling.
According to Shepard, Nolan wasn't on that particular stretch of the island when the argument happened at all. Now sit with that for a second, because this is where the case stops being simple. You have a civil rights attorney, representing a grieving family, looking at a piece of audio and identifying it as potential evidence of an altercation involving the victim in his final hours. And you have a childhood friend of that same victim, someone who is physically present, someone who has no obvious motive to lie about his own voice, saying, no, that's actually me, and it has nothing to do with Nolan at all. Both of these people are talking about the same 11 seconds of audio, and they are describing 2 completely different stories. This is the exact moment true crime cases either get solved or get swallowed by speculation, and right now, this one is still hanging in that uncertain middle space. Because here's what nobody outside of Horn Island actually knows for certain. Voice matching from a shaky, low-quality phone recording, captured from a moving boat, with wind and waves and a beach full of 300 people in the background, is not the kind of thing you can settle with the naked ear. It's the kind of thing forensic audio analysts spend weeks on, comparing vocal patterns, pitch, cadence, breathing rhythm. As far as the public record shows, no such official analysis has been released. What we have instead is one attorney's interpretation and one friend's flat denial. So which one do you believe? And more importantly, does it even matter who was yelling in that specific clip if it turns out that argument never touched Nolan at all? Shepard didn't stop at the audio. He also took aim at something else that had gone viral. A photo Crump had shared suggesting Nolan might have made it back to the mainland alive and ended up at a pool party, hours after he was supposedly last seen on the island. If true, that photo would have rewritten the entire timeline of Nolan's final hours. Shepard says it's simply from the wrong night. He says that pool party happened a full week earlier, on June 27th, in a nearby town called Pass Christian, long before anyone had a reason to be watching Nolan's movements. He says a mutual friend posted it as part of an old photo dump, and one speculation started swirling. That friend deleted it, presumably because it was never meant to be evidence of anything. If Shepard's telling the truth, then two of the most viral, most emotionally charged pieces of evidence in this entire case, the yelling audio and the pool party photo, both dissolve under direct scrutiny from someone who is actually there. And if that's the case, what does it say about how quickly the rest of us, all of us watching from our phones, were willing to build a narrative out of context we didn't actually have? But here's the twist inside the twist. Shepard isn't a neutral party either. He loved Nolan. He says explicitly that he and his friends would have died for him, which means everyone weighing in on this case, from the attorney representing the grieving family, to the friend defending his social circle, to the families whose sons were also on that boat, is speaking from a position of loyalty, grief, or self-protection. Nobody in this story is a disinterested observer, and that's exactly why the actual forensic evidence, the audio analysis, the toxicology report, the full-state autopsy, matters so much more than any single person's memory of a chaotic day with 300 people and hours of drinking on a remote island with no cell service. Now, let's talk about what all of this did once it hit the wider world, because the online reaction to this case has become almost as significant a story as the death itself. Within days of Nolan going missing, his mother was posting increasingly desperate pleas on Facebook, and those posts didn't stay contained to their community. They went national. Almost immediately and almost predictably in the current moment, this case became something bigger than one missing teenager. It became a referendum. A single photo showing Nolan smiling with his arm around a group of friends who happened to be mostly white got treated by large parts of the internet like a piece of evidence in itself. People who had never met any of these teenagers, who knew nothing about their actual relationship, looked at that photo and built entire narratives from it. Some of that reaction came from a place of real, earned historical caution. Ben Crump said out loud, standing at a podium next to Nolan's parents, "This is the state where Emmett Till was lynched." That sentence wasn't thrown around lightly, and it wasn't meant to be. It was a direct appeal to a specific, documented history of black families in Mississippi being told there was nothing to see, nothing to investigate, move along, when their children were killed under suspicious circumstances. For a lot of people watching this case unfold, that history is an abstract talking point. It's the lens they can't help but view every single detail through. And then there's the other side of that same coin. Once the story went viral, it also became fuel for people with absolutely no connection to Mississippi, no connection to Nolan, no connection to any of the families involved, to start manufacturing content, fabricated images, selectively edited clips, timelines invented out of thin air and presented with total confidence. At one point, someone even built an AI-generated deepfake using the likeness of Nolan's own mother, putting words in her mouth that she never said about the death of her own son. She had to go back online, exhausted, grieving, and publicly explain that the video wasn't her, while simultaneously trying to organize a real investigation into what actually happened to her child. Try to imagine that for a second. Burying your son, and also fighting an army of strangers online who are inventing a version of your own voice to spread lies about him. This is actually where we need to slow down and talk about something bigger than any single piece of footage, because the audio clip and the pool photo aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern that's defined this entire case from day one, and it's worth naming directly, because it's happening again right now in real time as new claims keep surfacing online. Here's the pattern. Something ambiguous happens, or gets filmed, or gets photographed, in the middle of a chaotic day with hundreds of people and almost no reliable documentation. Someone online decides what that ambiguous thing means. That interpretation gets attached to a headline, a caption, sometimes a specific name, and within hours, it's being treated by thousands of people as an established fact, even though nobody involved in actually investigating this case has verified a single piece of it. In just the last few days alone, that pattern has produced claims about evidence being altered, about specific families obstructing the investigation, about boat property being cleaned or disposed in the middle of the night in the judge's house. Some of these claims come from accounts with no connection to anyone involved. Some come dressed up as insider knowledge. Almost none of them come with a named witness, a timestamp that checks out, or corroboration from anyone with actual authority over this investigation. And at least one of the families named in these unverified claims has already gone on record stating clearly that nobody in their household is trying to impede the investigation or hamper the search for answers in any way. That's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath this entire case right now. Serious allegations, the kind that could ruin a real person's life if they're false, are spreading with the same speed and the same confidence as verified facts. And once something like that is out there, once a name is attached to an accusation like tampering with evidence, it doesn't matter how quickly it gets debunked. The accusation moves faster than the correction ever will. This is exactly why the Jackson County Sheriff's Office keeps issuing the same specific request over and over in nearly every public statement they've made. They're not asking for your opinion. They're not asking for your theory. They're asking specifically for original unedited photos and videos from anyone who was on that island on July 4th. Not screenshots, not reposts, not clips that have already been slowed down, captioned, and reframed by somebody with an agenda before they ever reach the sheriff's desk. The original files, with the metadata intact, the kind of evidence that can actually be verified instead of just believed. Think about why that distinction matters so much. A screenshot can be taken out of context. A caption can reframe an innocent photo into something sinister. A reposted video, stripped of its original file information, can't be dated or verified the way an untouched original can. Every single piece of viral evidence in this case that has actually been challenged, the yelling audio, the pool party photo, fell apart specifically because someone with first-hand knowledge was able to point to the original context that got lost somewhere in the reposting. That's the real story happening inside this case right now, running parallel to the investigation itself. It's not just a question of what happened to Nolan Wells on Horn Island. It's a live demonstration of how quickly the internet can build an entire alternate version of events out of ambiguous fragments, and how hard it is to walk that version back once it starts spreading, even when the people closest to the truth are the ones doing the walking back. The community reaction split almost immediately into two camps that have been talking past each other ever since. On one side, people organizing protests, demanding transparency, treating this case as part of a much longer, painful pattern in American history where black victims' deaths get quietly labeled accidents. On the other side, people, including some of Nolan's own close friends, frustrated that a tragedy is being reshaped into a narrative they say doesn't match what they actually witnessed. Shepard himself said it directly. He said he understands Nolan's parents are grieving, and that he thinks Crump has taken advantage of that vulnerability, pushing a version of events he doesn't believe is accurate. He said, in his words, that he and his friends have become targets because of it. That's a genuinely uncomfortable thing to hear, no matter which side of this you find yourself leaning toward, because it means real people, teenagers who just lost a close friend, are now also fielding harassment and threats over a case they say is being misrepresented. And on the other side, a mother who just lost her son is fielding deep fakes at her own face and a wave of public skepticism about whether her grief is even justified. The sheriff's office, for its part, has tried to walk a careful line in public statements, acknowledging that a significant amount of speculation and commentary has been circulating, while stressing that investigators are working through eyewitness accounts, physical evidence, and other reliable information, not social media theories. That's the kind of statement that satisfies almost nobody in a moment like this. Not the people demanding immediate accountability. Not the people demanding immediate exoneration for the friends involved. It's the sound of an institution trying to slow a story down that the internet has already sped up past the point of control. And underneath all of it, the actual hard evidence everyone claims to be interpreting the audio, the photos, the timeline, still hasn't been formally, forensically settled by anyone with the authority to settle it. Not the sheriff's department. Not an independent audio analyst. Nobody has stood up and said, with verified certainty, whose voice is on that recording or exactly which night that pool photo was taken. Right now, in this specific moment, it's still one friend's word being weighed against one attorney's interpretation, while an entire online audience picks a side based on instinct history. And whichever version of the story confirms what they already believed walking in, that's worth sitting with, honestly. Because most of us, scrolling through this case on our phones, have already decided what we think happened to Nolan Wells. We decided it's somewhere between a blurry video clip and a viral photo, and a press conference invoking one of the darkest chapters in American history. But none of us were on that island. None of us heard that voice in person. None of us know, with real certainty, what those 11 seconds of audio actually prove, or which of the newer claims circulating right now will hold up once someone actually checks them. So here's the question worth asking yourself before you scroll to the comments and pick a side. When a case like this collides with a country's raw, unresolved history around race and justice, does that context help us see the truth more clearly because we finally stop giving institutions the automatic benefit of the doubt? Or does it sometimes make the truth harder to find because every single piece of ambiguous evidence and every single unverified rumor gets filtered instantly through a story we already expect to be true? There's no comfortable answer to that. And until a verified audio analysis, a confirmed timeline, and a completed toxicology report actually arrive, that discomfort is exactly where this case and everyone following it is going to have to sit.